Welcome to the tip, y'all.
Welcome. How are you feeling today? Happy Friday.
Oh my goodness. I'm okay. Like I had a good week this week. Like it was like you know how life be a roller coaster.
Yes.
I was dip. The dip is what is gonna be the tip today. Then it came back up,
Yeah.
right? So yes, I'm feeling good. I'm glad it's Friday. I usually try to have some sort of fun thing planned for me and my daughters to do on Friday evening. So I gotta figure out what that's gonna be this evening. So yes, but Friday hit different when you're an entrepreneur because you're really just working all the time. So it ain't the same.
100%.
How about you?
I'm feeling much better. Monday started out mighty low.
Honey.
It wasn't, I was down, just stuck at the bottom. Okay. I wasn't even dipping. I was dipped. Okay.
Right.
Had been plummeted, plunged, all of the things that means under, uh,
Right.
is where I started out. Because the entrepreneur lifestyle, it is, it's not an easy one. Um,
Mm-mm.
and we talked about it on our accountability call. So if you
Yes. Yes.
check that out and figure out what we're doing real time, that's where you can go for that.
Yes, y'all. We do an accountability call every Monday. Myself, Zenitra, and one of our friends, Ejani or Eve. We go on my YouTube. So if you want to check out the play-by-play week by week, make sure you go to my YouTube channel at International Inez and see the accountability call under my lives. And you'll know the dips, baby. Dip, baby.
That is the real, that it is unfiltered. It is an opportunity for us to capture the process as we are in it, with the hopes of being able to look back and see how far we've come. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but but be prepared. It's not going to be pretty every day.
Mm-mm.
But the point of having that accountability call, it is so that we have a team of people who can see beyond the moment that we're in and encourage us to push through to that we can get back to kind of the fun, the excitement, the highs of entrepreneurship, because the lows are going to come as well. So
Mm-hmm.
definitely
Mm-hmm.
make sure you check that out. Make sure you check me out on Life Unlearned, available on YouTube, also on Patreon if you want to see all of the interviews. I'm having some really amazing guests that are telling us their story, and the things that they've had to unlearn in order to create a successful life for themselves. And what I really love about it is sometimes it's an opportunity for you to be seen, right? For what you're experiencing to be shared so that you know that you're not the only one. And then other times it's just a look at a completely different lifestyle. There's so many different tracks, of life that you can take. And we are on the one that we're on, and we don't even realize that there are others. So a lot of times it's just illuminating to be like, oh wow, like I never even considered what that lifestyle would look like, or what
Mm-hmm.
that career path would look like. So
Mm-hmm.
even if we're not here, there are so many places that you can reach us.
Right. Yes. And speaking of when it ain't gonna be pretty, I did a life unlearn with Zenitra and it was accepted that it ain't gonna be pretty. And what I loved about it is like it gave me a chance to reflect. So that's one of the other reasons that you might want to go watch Life Unlearn is because sometimes we're just in the flow, right? We're in the automation of life and you're just going, going, going. And watching others reflect gives you the opportunity to also reflect on the things that you have unlearned and basically think about just how far you come. So make sure you go check that out.
Yes, yes.
So we're gonna start this thing all right.
Welcome to Tip on Top of the Tip. I am Zenitra Perry.
And I am Inez Chimangariso.
Today we are here for the tip on top of the tip.
Honey, we're gonna start this thing all right with the value, okay?
Okay, so we still have our little wheel randomizers. Let's throw that in there and see what our value is for today. Okay, so today's value is growth.
Oh my God. Oh, y'all. If you are an insecure fan, you already know. You know what that is.
Yes.
Okay. Um, value of growth. Oh my God. So the funny thing is, I think that a part of we've been learning about our life path numbers. And for me, what I have learned is that like growth, development, personal, a bit just being able to attain who I think that I am is really important to me. Like it's really ingrained in me. And so growth is a really big value to me because I feel like um it allows me to move closer. But also, if you think about growth, when you think about things that grow, like children, right, people, plants, it's a slow process. And if you stand there and watch it, you can't see it,
Mm.
right? You can't see it. But if you nurture it, right, if you water it, if you feed it, then eventually, and you just let it be, eventually it will grow, right? It will turn into something bigger than what it was. And so for me, I look at growth that way too, specifically for, myself, allowing myself to nurture, the things that I'm learning, nurture myself, water myself, feed my soul, feed my spirit, feed my mind, and allowing myself to grow slowly. We talk about a lot on the accountability call, progress over perfection.
Mm.
Right. And to me, that is at the basis of growth. Like, it's not gonna be perfect, right? Every plant don't look the same, every flower don't look the same, everything not gonna grow the same. Which is very hard to think of, it's hard to soak in, because when we're kids, because we're in such a structured system, we feel like everything grows the same. Right?
Yes.
Everybody's supposed to learn the same, move the same, everybody moves at the same pace. But as an adult, especially as an entrepreneur, you realize that that's not the case. So just allowing yourself to grow at your pace, allowing myself to grow at my pace, and like we were talking about earlier, reflecting back so I can look back at what the seed was,
Mm.
right? Look back at the seed so I can see how far I've come.
I love that. When I think about growth, and maybe it's because of the version of growth season that I'm in, I think about the stretching, the tough times, right? The unknowing, because to get to growth, you have to start somewhere, and that somewhere usually isn't where you want to end up, right? So
Mhm.
it's a level of awareness of like, wow, I got to get better at this. I have to learn something. And again, that's from the perspective of where I am now. When I think back to when I was in more of a linear growth, whether it's school or even working in corporate, and it's like, this is what the path is. You go from this position to that position, and it's almost planned out for you. I absolutely loved it, right? One of my sayings is, if I'm not learning, I'm leaving. If I'm not growing, I'm going. So I've always had growth as a value. However, it shows up in different forms. So like you said, from a school perspective, it feels like, it's step by step, is very linear. The growth that I'm experiencing now is, again, left, right, up, down, circle, go around the block, spin the block, duck, hide behind the tree, on the block. It is just like, it is not as easy or straightforward as one would think it is. But because I do value, progress, I'm always in a space of learning. It's just
Mhm.
a little bit difficult or more challenging now that I'm not in someone else's system and I'm trying to create that system for myself. So growth is always a value of mine. I mean, it shows up in the way I parent. It shows up in the way that I lead. Like, at the end of every year, like, I'm checking to see, how did I grow? How did I influence growth in others? So 100%, it's a value. It's just interesting how it looks different based off of where you are, your current situation in life.
Yeah, I would agree. And I love that you were talking about, like, ref- looking back at the end of the year, because if you think about it, that's something, as a part, if you are a professional, that happens, right? You have your yearly review, right? And they talk about, what were your goals? What were the things that you met? What were the things you didn't meet? Where do you want to go? And I think, because growth is a value of mine, I also do that in my personal life, right? And I think that is important. I feel like that's even more important than doing it in your career, because
Mm-hmm.
you spend a lot more time in your personal life than you do in your career. And at the seat of you, you are more than what you do for a living, right? And so getting clear on what growth looks like for you, right? And how you're growing and how you want to grow, I think is very important, as an individual, outside of, what you do for a living.
That's great, because in the season that we're in now, sometimes growth looks like cutting back,
Yeah.
not doing too much. Okay, listen. The level of say no, take it off your plate is just not going to happen. The level of that space that we are in right now is so uncomfortable. Like, we talk about all that, we hate it, right? Because
Yes.
we've just been in this space where growth looks like adding to, getting more. And now we're in a space where it's like, no, in order to continue to grow, you got to get a lot of stuff off your plate. I remember of course, I'm a Beyonce fan, went and saw the Renaissance film, and she talked about how sometimes to get it right, you have to take away. Like, how can we simplify this into like its purest form or its simplest form in order to have the thing that is perfect? And so that's a different form of growth. It's almost like a pruning season if you're thinking about it from like a plant perspective. But growth can absolutely be removing things so that you even have space to go deeper and wider in the things that actually stay on your plate. It's not just about more, but it's about going deep.
I love it. I love it. So, y'all, we're gonna get into the tip. So if you're not familiar with how we do this, the tips usually come from either years of conversations between us or current situations where we will have some sort of quip or some sort of saying that comes up and we like, yes, that wraps up a whole concept of what we believe. So yes. So what is the tip for today?
So today's tip is, what you have is of value at every level.
Every level, okay? Every
Every
level.
single level.
I don't know where this came. In my brain, and y'all know I don't remember things, but I feel like this came from Z's time at HBO for one of her managers and one of her mentors. But the funny thing is, just recently, like as in this week, last week, I had an experience where I had to remind myself of that because a lot of times we feel like when we enter new rooms, right? When we enter new rooms with new people who may have more experience than us, right? Who potentially could have more money than us, right? Who could be further along than us. We can feel sometimes like we don't belong, right? And I had an experience where I was feeling like, what am I doing in this room? Like, what am I doing in this room? I was in a room of people who I respected, who have done some amazing things. And I was kind of reflecting and sitting there thinking about what I had to bring to the table, right? With the things that I've done and the things that I've achieved. And some people will call it imposter syndrome. Like you're thinking about like, I'm not supposed to be here. And I think that's at the root of this tip, right? Is that regardless of what room you're in, the value that you have, and that really is not your, because it's not your worth, right? Because you are infinitely worthy, but it's the your knowledge, right? The way you think, just sometimes the way you think is valuable, right? So bringing that to the table regardless of who's in the room, because one of the things we were talking about is like, if you're in the room, that means you're supposed to be in the room, like. And what I was telling Z about that situation was what I said to myself was like, I don't know if it's in the Bible or somewhere else, but there's a saying of like, if you're in this room, this new room that is levels ahead of you, speaking of growth, levels ahead of you, like, then that means that is just as attainable for you. It's just as much for you as it is for the people who are already there. So I had to remind myself that my value is valuable at every level, whether I am going to people who are younger and less experienced, who I can mentor and coach, or if I'm going to be in rooms with people who are way further along than me, have way more experience, and in my mind, know more than me. There's still value that I can bring.
Absolutely. So, first of all, kudos to you for your memory, because you usually don't remember anything.
I be trying, girl.
Good job. I'm very proud of you, because that was definitely the root of it. I will also say, as much as we talk about you don't have a good memory, for some reason you listen to me and you remember the things that I say, because I don't, girl. I just be talking.
Yes.
I just be out
Yep.
here inspiring the people, and I just go on with my life. And then Inez will bring it back to me like, girl, you know what you said. I'm like, girl, what'd I say? So this is one of those girl, what I say moments, but you're right. It started out because of an experience that I had at work where um, I was probably 5 or 6 years into my career, and I had a mentor who was obviously, 10 plus years ahead of me. And at her level of even at vice president, and I was at a significantly more junior level, she would call me into her office and say, this is what we're working on at the moment. How would you handle it? And I would give my, just natural thought process. Like I would do this, that, these are the things that I would consider. And she would say, exactly. I need for you to understand that you don't have to wait until you get to this level before believing that you can think at this level. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's like, what you have today at this very level can be used at the level that I'm at. And it did wonders for my confidence, because I will be transparent. Many times in corporate, they make it seem as if you're not at a particular level, then you aren't capable of thinking at that level. They don't even
Mm-hmm.
allow you to even have access to what's happening at that level. They're very
Right.
secretive. It's almost as if information becomes their power. So they don't even share information. So you always feel like there's this information glass ceiling where there's
Mm-hmm.
something that they know up there that allows them to function at a higher level than I'm capable of. But it's
Mm-hmm.
not about capacity. It's not about capability. It's about exposure. And if you
Mm-hmm.
had exposure to those levels, to those problems, a lot of times you could think your way through it, because it's about the process in which you're able to analyze the information that's there and then apply it. It's not that you can't do it. It's not a you can or you can't. It's
Mm-hmm.
about, do you have the thought process that can work through kind of solutioning through these different problems? So having that experience for me really gave me the courage to go into rooms to be like, even if there are people here who are more senior, I know that I can think through these problems, because I had a little backstage meeting where I was
Right.
problems that's even above their current level, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's originally where the tip came from. But it's interesting because, to your point, we are in a whole new world when we're looking at things from an entrepreneurial perspective. And I think that the only thing that you can kind of measure side by side truly is time, right? You can see someone who's been doing it far longer than you have, but you can't see everything that they're doing in a way to compare it to what you're capable of doing or your skill sets. You may not have done it as an entrepreneur, but there are skill sets that you bring just from your life experience, from your career prior to stepping into this entrepreneurship world, that is of value in that room, in that space, your first year as an entrepreneur. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't discount yourself, and make sure that whenever you step into these spaces, that you remember, like, no, there's some things that I'm bringing that may not exist in this room. And even if that is simply the way I think through things, that is valuable in these rooms that I walk into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another conversation we were having this week was with regard to, like, I have always been someone who is heavy in my emotions, right? Now, at this stage in my life, I am very clear on what they are, and I'm very good at processing them differently thanks to coaching. However, when I was younger, I would think that being emotional was a weakness of mine, right? I thought it was something that was not valuable, right? As I got older, I realized that it is a strength of mine to be able to emote and be comfortable with being vulnerable to pretty much anybody, right? Like that is a strength of mine, right? And so sometimes we can be blinded by the things that we think are a weakness or that come easy to us. Like we feel like, well, if it's easy for us, it's gotta be easy for everybody, because so it's not valuable. But
Right.
what you don't realize is, again, if you're in the room, you have to lean into your identity. And one of the things that I was thinking about during that time was like, what is my expertise in this room? Right?
Mhm.
What is the thing that I know about me that I can bring here? So I can sit back and I don't have to say all the things, but I can be thinking, because I know I'm an amazing problem solver. I'm great at critical thinking, and my expertise in the field of project management, itinerary creation, and travel. I know that I know, right? So that is the lens that I'm looking through this, and this is the value that I know, regardless of what room I'm in, I'm able to bring. And so I think it's important for us to like not take your skills for granted, right? Every little piece of you is valuable. The small things are valuable. One of the things that I know about myself is it's very easy for me to be comfortable in rooms, and it's also very easy for me to make other people comfortable in rooms with each other, right?
Sure.
And so even that, right? Even if I'm just bringing that to the room, even if I have nothing else to say, that is valuable, right? So really just it's really important to know who you are and what values, what strengths, what skills you already have, so that when you're in those rooms and you lean into the tip, right, of, my value is valuable at every level, you know what that value is, right?
Yeah.
You know what that is because you know what your identity is.
Okay. So I'm gonna piggyback off of that because I was doing a little reading as I was thinking about this, and this ties back to your you bringing up imposter syndrome. And so I found 5 types of imposter syndromes. I'm sure there's more. There's maybe a list with 7, a list maybe 10, but I found 5. Okay. And so what you were just talking about, oh, and for the record, I'm probably 4 out of 5. Okay. So I never saw imposter syndrome as these things, but I was like, oh baby, you just read me. So the first one that relates to what you were talking about is called the natural genius, where
Mm,
you tell yourself that everything must be handled with ease, otherwise it's not a natural talent. So the fact that you
mm,
have the natural talent of bringing comfort into the room, you think that everything else is supposed to be a natural talent. And when you don't have that
right.
thing, you're like, oh no, baby, I don't belong here, because naturally I should be able to, because I can naturally do these other things.
Yeah.
That's one of the 5. Okay. Number 2 of the 5, the perfectionist.
Ooh, honey, girl.
You already know.
All right.
You set extremely
Yeah.
high standards for yourself and beat yourself up when you don't reach them.
Oh, baby.
Lay me on the floor,
Right.
because again, natural talent is supposed to allow me to easily do everything well because I'm a perfectionist, girl. Okay. The
Yes.
next one, the superwoman or man. You feel that you should be able to excel at every role you take on in your life. And I will
Oh,
add excel immediately.
of
Because
course.
it's not that we don't get to excelling, but sometimes the time in which it takes to get to excel makes us feel like I can't, like I'm not capable. And that's how
Mhm.
imposter syndrome shows up. 2 more for you. The next one is the expert. You
Mhm.
expect to know everything and feel ashamed when you don't. So I expect to know everything about what I'm doing. I don't have a general expect to know everything.
Right.
There's things that I don't know, and I'm okay because I'm never going to do those things. But if I'm doing a thing, I, in my head, expect that I should know all of the processes, all of the steps, all of the people, all of the resources.
Mhm.
And it's like, girl, that's not even making space for anyone to contribute. I thought you were queen collaboration.
Right.
Had to check myself on that one. Um,
Mhm.
and well, I guess this one might be me too a little bit. So the last one is the soloist. You believe that work must be accomplished alone and refuse to take credit if you receive any kind of assistance. Okay, no, that part.
Oh, no, no, no.
Yeah, giving credit to all of the people. But this idea, especially this comes up for me when I'm in challenging situations. I feel like I can achieve my way out of it as opposed to phoning a friend and being like, girl, this is what I'm going through right now. In
Mhm.
my head, I'll say, if I could just accomplish these things, then I'll feel better. And it's
Right.
like, no, you don't even feel good. So you
Right.
can't
So you
even
can't accomplish.
accomplish. So like, but you're trying to do it all by yourself. So when
Mhm.
I was reading these things, when talking about imposter syndrome, because y'all know over here, we are the queens of confidence, right? Everything that we
Mhm.
talk about is rooted from a place of being confident in who you are and your skills and your abilities and what you bring to the room. And so at the surface, I never considered myself to struggle with imposter syndrome. But this perspective on it like really called me out and showed me some areas in which I can improve, so that I am reminded that what I have is of value at every level, regardless of whether I'm the expert or not, regardless of whether it's perfect or not, regardless
Mhm.
of how many roles I'm able to take on, it's still valuable at that level.
Mhm. And because you started talking about this, I realized that I I went through my notebook. Okay. And one thing, again, I am the queen of, I have the emotion, but now I know to process it, and I process it through writing. Right.
Mhm.
And so I wrote during that day, but I also am also a researcher. So I was combing the YouTubes about imposter syndrome on that day. And one of the things I found was a video by Gary Vee. And he said, um, imposter syndrome is a really nice way of saying insecure. Okay.
Well,
He said it's really just an insecurity. So he was like, I feel like we should just take the fluff off of it and say in the moment, there's a level of insecurity there. Right. And I was like, oh, Gary, okay, Gary, okay. But what he said was, then you can deal with it. Right. If you could just be like, I am insecure, because if you're insecure with something, that just means that you need to figure out what will make you more secure. Right.
mhm.
What is the thing that's going to make me more secure in this moment? Right. So that was one thing I found. Then I found this other video of this guy talking about how he has overcome imposter syndrome. And here are some of the things that he said that you should do, some of the things you should ask yourself when you're in those moments. The first thing he said was, what did I do to deserve to be in this room? And don't because sometimes when you have imposter syndrome, you think about something very small, right?
Mhm.
Like almost it was like, well, I just happen to know somebody, right? And he's like, no, don't go there. Like expound upon it. Like what have you really done? And to me, that's the point of like, who are you really? Like, what is the value that you know that you bring? That is the reason why you deserve to be in this room, right? The second question he said is, what are the advantages that the people in this room may have had, right? So sometimes when you're in the room, you feel like, oh my God, everybody else has worked so hard to be here, right? They've done so many amazing things, and they have 15 years and all of these things. So you think very highly of the hard work that they did to get there, but may not be the case, right? In the same way that you may think about yourself, that you just happen to know somebody or you just happen to be lucky, that may actually be something for them too, right? So it allows you to kind of give it an even plane and not feel like they work so hard and I just happen to be here, right? Like
Mhm.
it could be the other way too, right? The other thing he said was, what can I be proud of right now,
Mhm.
right? About myself. Like, what is it that you can be proud of? And so for me, I wrote down like one of the things I'm really proud of is my groundbreaking work in travel. Like when I started doing travel and planning trips, there was no Black travel movement, right? There was no Black people to go into all these countries, right? There was no hashtag Black travel on Instagram, right? That was groundbreaking in 2011, right? Especially from a bringing people to volunteer at these places. This is not something people were doing, right? And really just like the way that I think, again, the way that I think is obviously groundbreaking. So these are things that I'm proud of about myself, and the input I can bring to these spaces. The last question he said was, what role am I here to play?
Mhm.
Right. And being very clear on what is your role in this room, and also letting go of the idea that you have to be a guru and just be okay with being a guide,
Mm. That's
right? You don't have to know it all. You don't have to do it all. You don't have to lead it all. But there is somewhere that you could just be a guide, whether it's the meeting, whether it's the people, whether it's the brainstorming. There's something that you can guide and contribute to. So I loved that. I was like writing, honey, I was writing my little answers. And it really did help me a lot to move through the emotion and to get from insecure to secure.
yes. And that's what you're trying to do. First of all, shout out to the Teal Notebook. I didn't know that's what you wanted to
Hello,
hear.
you know
You know
it.
what I'm saying? Even
So
when miles apart, we be on the same page every time.
yes.
But what I loved about it is when we think about insecurities, it makes you feel small. And this allows you to open up. Like, no, let's think about how big you really are,
Mhm,
and that's what the confidence makes you, open up. It makes you feel bigger, not bigger than you are, but it prevents you from feeling small. So
mhm.
I love that those questions kind of take you to that place.
Yes, yes. So, y'all let us know what you feel about the tip. Remember, Your value is valuable at every level, every single one. Like, so, and if you feel insecurity, don't judge yourself because it's normal. Like, even us, the queens of confidence on this tip on top of the tip, honey, we be feeling it.
Yeah.
But this is your reminder. This is the thing you can go to remind yourself. Like, literally in that moment, I was thinking what Z said. Right? Like, it came to my mind, like, girl, you remember what Z said? Your value is valuable every level. Okay, girl, let's focus. Okay. Like, so this is what we want you to do with the tips. Like, in the moments where you're having those moments where you're not feeling confident, lean into the tip.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we will see you guys again in 2 weeks at our all new time, 9:30, back for another tip on top of the tip. Thank you, guys.